Hey everyone, I'm Brad and this is WatchRateHeart, and it's Friday, which means it's time for the watch list. It's where I discuss the films I've watched and discuss my feelings about them. And this week, if I have timed the release of this video well enough, this is releasing at the end of August, which means it's the end of summer. And I thought what better way to cap off the summer movie-going experience by watching movies that are reminiscent and remind us of the end of summer. We've got 4 films to discuss, one infamous one from 1995, so let's hang 10 and catch some waves with our first review. Let's start this off with Point Break, the 1991 action drama starring Keanu Reeves and Patrick Swayze, directed by Kathryn Bigelow. It has a Letterboxd score of 3.8 out of 5 and a Rotten Tomatoes score of 70% fresh. And I gotta say, this felt like really good popcorn entertainment. And usually I use the term popcorn derisively. It just means kind of like brain dead. And the film can be at times. But I actually was really enjoying the flow of the film. It's much like Bodhi in the film, played very charismatically by Patrick Swayze. It just wants you to go into the flow with the film. And Point Break does a really good job doing that. I was really hooked into the film. It has fun action sequences. Patrick Swayze is very good in the film. And there's some good performances by the supporting cast as well. John McGinley. I really like Gary Busey the most out of this film, my God. And Lori Petty is good in this film as well. But here's the thing, though. I think the film is really good popcorn entertainment for the first 2 acts. The third act is where I think the film really stumbles hard. And there's 2 reasons why. 1, the film goes on a little too long. And 2, they turn Bodhi into this kind of sociopathic villain at the end of the film to justify that length. What basically happens is Bodhi finds out who Johnny Utah, played by Keanu Reeves, is. Then for some reason, Bodhi goes from this Zen master-like Robin Hood to this sociopathic villain that just doesn't really fit very well with the rest of the film that you saw. And honestly, Swayze plays the part of Bodhi very well for the first 2 acts. But when that third act happens and he just turns into the sociopath, I just felt like that just doesn't feel right with the rest of the film. And if I'm honest, I think the ending does hurt the film. But because it's a popcorn film and because a lot of this film, if you really want to pick holes at it, doesn't make much sense in a, not even just in a logic way, but in a thematic way, I think you can excuse those problems with the third act of the film. Now, Point Break is a fun film. I'm going to give it 3 stars out of 5, but I got to be honest with you. I was heading towards 4 stars when I was going through the first 2 acts. I was really enjoying myself, and it just felt like the third act just stumbled really hard. But I got to say, I like the performance of the film. I think the action is fun, including the action sequences and some of the extreme sports sequences as well. Overall, it's an enjoyable film. Again, I give it 3 stars, but really, it should have been a lot more if it hadn't stumbled in the third act so hard. Now, I not only talk about my opinion, I also talk about the opinions of people on the Letterboxd community. And let's start with Josh Barton. Josh Barton gives it 5 stars out of 5. He loves this film, and he gives it a heart. And he says, 100% pure adrenaline. Point Break is one of the definitive action movies of the 90s. Kathryn Bigelow's film is pumped full of testosterone, and everything is dialed up to 11 as Keanu Reeves' Johnny Utah aims to take down Patrick Swayze's Bodhi, a surfing guru with a knack for robbing banks. It's very much a film full of characters that are indeed young, dumb, and full of cum. Oh, God. That's right. But it's an absolute blast from start to finish. Yeah, there's a lot of people who really enjoy this film, and it's interesting how some people evangelize this film. One who doesn't do that is Robert Stewart. Robert Stewart gives it 1 star out of 5, and he says, people who complain about Keanu Reeves' acting in Dracula clearly haven't watched this. He's laughably bad here, which pains me to say because I really love the guy, just like everyone else on Earth does, but woof. Kind of disagree. Like, I think he's all right in this movie. He's not great, but the film is kind of corny, so I think he just goes with the flow of the film. There are some moments here, and Busey, McGinley, and Swayze all do good work in their roles. But overall, this somehow combined being really boring with being equally dumb. Fun fact, I was writing this as the movie was ending, and I had it at 1.5 stars out of 5. I said, I swear to God, if Keanu Reeves lets him go surf that wave, I will knock the half star off of this. And then he did. And so I did. Johnny Utah is in the running for the worst movie character ever. That's a little harsh. He's not the worst, but it's not great. But yeah, I kind of rolled my eyes too when I saw that part. And we have this last review from Grant from Movies for Granted. He gives it 2.5 stars out of 5, and Grant says, "Unfortunately, I'm not a part of the Point Break cult. Really bad acting all around with terrible line reads from practically every scene. Swayze is cool as hell, but this still applies to him. Reeves is bad. No way around it no matter how much I love him as a person and him in certain roles, Neo and John Wick. I do very much love the last encounter between Bodhi and Johnny. Man, look, I am not a fan of Keanu Reeves at all. I think he's not a good actor at all, but I don't think he's particularly bad in the film. I think he's the weakest link in the film. I think he is nowhere near as good as Swayze, Busey, Petty, McGinley. I think everyone else is better and carries him throughout the film. I don't think he's entirely bad. But then again, I don't think this is a great film either. I think it's a good time if you just check your brain out and enjoy.
So I'm gonna do my kind of dancing with a great partner who's not only a terrific dancer, but somebody who's taught me that there are people willing to stand up for other people no matter what it costs them. Somebody who's taught me about the kind of person I want to be.
Next is a film that feels like every middle-aged old lady just seemed to love in the 90s for, well, you're going to see obvious reasons, and that is Dirty Dancing, starring Patrick Swayze, Jennifer Grey, and Jerry Orbach, directed by Emile Ardolino. It has a Letterboxd score of 3.7 out of 5, a Rotten Tomatoes score of 72% fresh, and it won 1 Oscar for Best Song for I Had the Time of My Life. By the way, not hating on that song, that's a pretty damn good song, so I'll just give it that. Speaking of the song, I think the biggest thing about this movie that works, the highlight of the film, is the soundtrack. The soundtrack has excellent music, and it does a very good job of matching what is going on screen and having you feel what is happening on screen. In fact, I would say that the soundtrack works overtime in this film, because if I am being honest, there's one crucial thing about this film that does not work, but I will get to that. I want to say first, if there's a film version of Safe Horny, it is this film. Though there is sex and skin in the film, it's tasteful enough not to feel dirty, and the most sexually charged aspects of the film are the dancing. And really think about this for a second, okay? This is a film about sexual awakening. It's about Baby's sexual awakening when she meets Johnny. And although they show that there is sex in the film, they don't show the sex. In fact, when it does get to that point, it's mostly kissing and rubbing, and then they cut to the next scene. But when it comes to the dancing, they're writhing, they're gyrating, they're thrusting, they are touching each other, they're sweaty and hot. The metaphor of dancing and sex is pretty apparent in that film. Speaking of the dancing's pretty good in this film, and matching it with the music is done very well. I also think the film is very well paced. It's at a short 100-minute runtime, and I think that works to its benefit. It just cuts to the chase on nearly every aspect of the film. That said, the one big problem I have with the film is that the central romance of the film is flat. I don't believe for a second that these people are in love. I believe in their contentiousness. I believe when they argue. I believe when Patrick Swayze's character is exasperated with Baby. I get that, and I believe that. But the romance of the film, I just don't think really works. One other thing about the film that I'm kind of either or on, I don't care for it, but I don't think it's really a negative, is that this film is slathered in nostalgia. It is honestly crazy how the film relies on the feeling of, oh, remember the old days. Oh, remember when it was like this. And remember how rebellious we were at that point. It really feeds onto that. And that's really a feeling that is, I think, universal with teenagers. It's really not exclusive to that time, but this film highly relies on that. So as for a rating, I'm going to give Dirty Dancing 3 stars out of 5. I think it's an alright film. I think it's good for what it is. It's got its charms, and I do like the dancing, and I love the soundtrack to this film. But if I am being honest, the romance between Baby and Johnny in the film is just not believable for me. Again, I believe the contentiousness, I believe the drama of the film. But if I'm being honest, the actual romance, I don't buy at all. And mainly it's, I don't buy that Johnny would fall for Baby. I understand Baby would fall for Johnny, absolutely. I have a hard time understanding why Johnny would suddenly fall for this girl that he was greatly annoyed by. So overall, 3 stars out of 5 for me for Dirty Dancing. Please direct your hate comments on the comment section and be respectful as much as you can, please. Thank you. Alright, so let's see what the Letterboxd community thinks about this film. Robert gives it 4 stars out of 5 with a heart, and Robert says, this is a classic, albeit fucking batshit crazy movie. Yes and no. I mean, I think it's crazy that they had an abortion subplot. I thought that was weird. It's like, huh, Really? You couldn't just have the other dancer broke her leg or broke her shin or something? She just can't dance? Oh, no, she got pregnant and needs an abortion. Okay, sure. All right. And the other problem that the film has is that when it comes to the father of the film, which is Jerry Orbach's character, I think he's 1,000% justified in feeling the way he does throughout the entire film. So it's not like he's being crusty old dad and he doesn't understand things nowadays. It's like, no, my daughter is hanging out with these people who are getting themselves pregnant and doing all sorts of screwed up stuff. So, yeah, I don't like this. Okay, it actually kind of is kind of crazy now that I think about it. Let's get into our next one. This is from Robert Stewart. Robert Stewart gives it 4 stars out of 5. And he has a quick rundown of ups and downs here. And his ups are, sometimes you just need a sappy, cheerful, dancy, all the good people win ending to feel good about your day. That's true. Sometimes you just need that. Swayze was a fucking Nova, guys. Gone far too soon. He just commanded the screen. But minus the age gap is icky. I mean, how old is Johnny supposed to be? 25 and Baby is 17? I know it's an old movie set in an older time, but still, I thought Johnny was like in his early 20s. I didn't know if he was 25. That could be true. And then his last one is Grandma Gilmore wasn't given much to do here. I forgot who Grandma Gilmore is, to be absolutely honest. But overall, great movie. Let's get into our next one. Here's some negative reviews here. We have James. James gives it 2.5 stars out of 5. So down the middle. And James says, my mom hates me for not liking this. Yeah. That's partly the reason why I didn't watch this at first for a long time, because God forbid I didn't like it. How many old women would be like, oh, you just don't like romance films. That's why. That is such a romantic film. Like, yeah, I'm with you, dude. And finally, an actual negative review. We have My Wheelhouse. My Wheelhouse gives it 2 stars and a heart. Okay. And My Wheelhouse says, I don't know how this has such a high score. Oh, wait a minute. Yes, I do. It's all girls' fault. They love to watch and rewatch the most retarded shit ever. Not exactly true. I'll be honest, there are films that are rated high on Letterboxd where I look at that and go, huh? Like, how? I don't have a couple on the top of my head right now, but yeah, there are a few. I really look at the rating and go, yeah, I don't know about that, guys. But again, I did enjoy Dirty Dancing for what it was, but I think the problem I have is I did not think the romance worked in this film. I don't know if that has more to do with the chemistry between Gray and Swayze or with the plot itself, but it just didn't work. But everything else around it I thought was good enough. Here I go again reviewing another movie, and it's Mamma Mia, starring Meryl Streep, Amanda Seyfried, Pierce Brosnan, Colin Firth, and Stellan Skarsgård, directed by Philia Lloyd. It has a Letterboxd score of 3.8 out of 5 and a Rotten Tomatoes score of 55% rotten. I gotta be honest, I like musicals, but I just felt like, oh, this is really not for me. But let's get to the positives before I get into that. I think the actors do the best job that they can with the material. Now, the material is very thin. The film is pretty threadbare when it comes to characterization, plot, storyline. It basically is, hey, small thing happens here, song. And then something happens here, song. And then it goes from there. But it's charming even though the plot and characters are really not good. And you know what? Honestly, it's pretty clear everyone in the film is having a great time. So I can see why, if some people like the movie, they love this movie because it's got this infectious good time feeling throughout the entirety of the film. But when it comes to the singing, there is a clear disparity in quality between the men and the women. The women are very good. In fact, I think the women are really good. I think Amanda Seyfried is really good in the film. Meryl Streep is very good. Christine Baranski is very good. I think Julie Walters is actually not bad as well. No problem with the women when it comes to singing, but the men, oh boy, is there a problem. Colin Firth and Stellan Skarsgård, I think, only do quote-unquote singing once in the film. And it's kind of that singing that Rex Harrison did in My Fair Lady, where it's kind of like talking in tune. So that wasn't that bad. But oh my God, Pierce Brosnan can't sing. He did the cover of SOS towards the end of the film, and it's painful. It's bad. I really have to debate with myself. What's a worse performance in a musical? Russell Crowe in Les Miserables or Pierce Brosnan in Mamma Mia? Because both are terrible. And I really questioned why they were there. Well, I know why Pierce Brosnan's there. He's charming, and it kind of makes sense that he's one of the three fathers, I guess. I don't know. But, like, he's really bad. It's really noticeable, too. It's not like, you're being nitpicky. No. it's bad. It's bad. And I just feel like the film is meant to be appealing to women and not men. So I guess maybe that's kind of why I also just did not vibe with this film at all. Overall, I'm going to give this 2 stars out of 5. If you go into Letterboxd, there's a lot of people who love this movie. And I guess I can understand why a little bit, but I gotta be honest, I was not really enjoying myself in this. I don't necessarily think it's bad. Well, Pierce Brosnan singing is really bad, but I don't think the film is exactly bad. But I gotta be honest, I just wasn't really enjoying the film all that much. I kind of was cringing, going, ugh. It's not like it's cringy where I'm like, oh, this is so painful. It's more like, oh, this is really not supposed to be for me, is it? It's one of those types of cringe. So it's kind of like I shouldn't be here. Can I get out? No. Oh dear, this is gonna get awkward. The women are great in this movie. I really like Meryl Streep. I think Amanda Seyfried is really good in this film. But the men, woo, not good. The plot, the characters, the story, there's really nothing there. It's just small dialogue song, and the dialogue is nothing to write home about. But anyway, 2 stars out of 5 for me for Mamma Mia. And let's get into the Letterboxd reviews. This review is from Josh Barton. Josh gives it 4 stars out of 5 with a heart. And he says, well worth watching just to see Pierce Brosnan belt out SOS alongside Meryl Streep. Maybe I don't know what good singing is anymore. I don't know. Anyway. This next review is from Saren. Saren gives it 3 stars out of 5, and Saren says, I am fully convinced that everyone was drunk while filming this movie, and it paid off. Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, it feels like everyone was having a really good time doing this movie. Like, they were all acting really goofy, really happy. It really felt genuine, so I can kind of see that. Absolutely. Sure. And this last review is from Kenzie. Kenzie gives it 1.5 stars out of 5, and Kenzie says, I only like this for nostalgic purposes. I'm sorry. Shitty storyline and dialogue covered by some catchy ABBA tunes. Frowny face. You know what's funny? I said in my review, it just feels like this is meant for more women than men. I had 1 positive review from a man and 1 negative review from a woman, so what the fuck do I know, I guess. But yeah, like, I'm a fan of musicals, and this film just did nothing for me at all. So, but if you like ABBA and you like the vibe that this film is going for and you haven't seen it yet, maybe you should. So, I don't know. I didn't like it, but you may very well. Finally, the last film from this episode is from 1995, and it is one of the most infamous ones, Waterworld, starring Kevin Costner, Janine Triplehorn, and Dennis Hopper, directed by Kevin Reynolds. It has a Letterboxd score of 2.9 out of 5, a Rotten Tomatoes score of 45% rotten, and it was nominated for Best Sound at the Oscars. And I have to say, the film as a concept is pretty interesting, but it is a heavily flawed film. First off, the film tonally is all over the place. It can be grimdark 1 minute. It can be a cheesy action film the next. It can be romantic in other spots. It can have some corny one-liners in some areas. It seems like the director couldn't get a handle on exactly how the film was going to be. And that becomes a big problem for a number of reasons. 1, for a film that is almost 2.5 hours long, the characters are paper thin in this movie. And 2, nothing is really all that interesting. And because of that, none of the characters are all that interesting. Again, I think the film conceptually is interesting, but there were some crucial mistakes that were made when it comes to world building. And I think the most crucial thing is the color palette of the film. So with a film that is set in the water most of the time, you're going to see a lot of blues. And I can understand why the film decided to make everything else maybe brownish green in most of the film. But you need to have splashes of color throughout just to make the actual color palette more interesting. And unfortunately, the film doesn't do that, and everything just looks brown. Even when it's inside certain areas, it's brown and black. It is a incredibly boring color palette that you're dealing with throughout the film. And let's get past the visual palette as well. Let's talk about the actual world that the film is inhabiting. Why does Mariner have gills? What made that happen? How did the mutations happen? Who are the smokers? What was the deal with that city in the beginning of the movie? You don't know because the film doesn't put much depth into it, and that becomes a real problem. Again, for a 2.5 hour film, the film doesn't do much to teach you about the world and teach you about the people inside of it. And that puts this film in a creative no man's land. There's not enough depth to make the creative parts interesting, but they're too dense to cut the film to 90 minutes. If I'm being honest, the film needs more time to develop these characters and develop the world around it. But I'm not watching a 4-hour Waterworld. It's not happening. It would be a terrible idea to do that, which is why I feel like the story was probably better off not as a movie. Maybe a TV series or a comic book, or maybe something else that would have made the way the film looks and what they did with the film a lot more palatable. I think would have been better off. I'm thinking maybe a 6-part TV series and center these episodes on certain characters. And this would have helped a lot with the tone, because there are points in the film where Mariner is doing horrible things to the two women he is supposedly protecting. At one point, he pimps out the older woman. I was like, what the hell? And then about an hour and a half later, that's why it feels like the tone is incredibly off in this film. But if I have to give one positive thing about this film, it's probably Dennis Hopper. The only reason why he's good in the film is because he just doesn't give a shit, just choose scenery. Man, Waterworld is not a good movie. I'm giving it 1 star out of 5. It has earned its reputation as a bad movie. Tonally all over the place. Creatively, it makes crucial mistakes in world building. The characters aren't interesting. The story is not that interesting as well. And for a 2.5-hour film, to have paper-thin characters and a world that I can't quite understand why things the way they are and why they built them the way they did, just leaves it a completely unsatisfying film. And even a performance by Dennis Hopper that is basically chewing scenery won't help make the film any better. So overall, 1 star out of 5 for me for Waterworld. All right, let's get into the Letterboxd community. This is Robert. Robert gives it 1.5 stars out of 5, and he cheekily replies, "Our first global warming documentary." Yeah, I thought about that too as I was watching. This second review is from TerrorVision84. TerrorVision likes this movie. TerrorVision gives it 3.5 stars out of 5, and he says, "Mad Max on the high seas. Waterworld has survived the last 30 years brilliantly and is a successful adventure film with great production values." I understand the comparison to Mad Max. Mad Max, especially for Fury Road, has kind of like the same mentality when it comes to its world building. Mad Max is set in a desert area, lots of oranges, but there are splashes of red and of silver and white in that film that really pops when you see it. Like, the world building, even for a film that does nothing when it comes to character building, portrays its world really well, which I would say Waterworld does not do very well at all. And we have another positive review. This is from Wyatt Bowler. Wyatt Bowler gives it 3 stars out of 5, and he says, "Costner's typical wooden acting, silly random plot sequencing, unnecessary CGI, and an overall meh movie. It could have unfolded better. The Mad Max of the Seas could have been brilliant, but it was somewhere between Road Warriors and Warriors of Virtue." The more and more I watch Kevin Costner in films, the more and more I'm starting to think that he just was not that good of an actor. Or maybe it's the movies I'm watching. I mean, I watched 13 Days, I believe, last year, and he was awful in that movie. There are a lot of questions I have about the plot and the decisions that were made in the film when it came to the characters. And one that just sticks out, it's not an important thing, but remember the scene where Jeanne Tripplehorn's character gets physically assaulted by the Mariner, and the Mariner cuts her hair with a knife. And then the very next scene, it shows the little girl has the same haircut. Why? Why did that happen that way? Why did she cut her hair that way? They never explain it. They just say, oh, they don't even mention it throughout the film. It's just that way. And that just really bugged me when I was watching the film. But yeah, I did not like this film at all. As you can see, some have reviewed it and thought it was a decent movie at best, but honestly, it's not for me. And that is it for this episode of Watch Rate Heart. But before I go, let me ask you 2 questions. First one is, what film instantly reminds you of summer? And honestly, I was never a summer guy, so I don't really have a film that gives me the good feelings about summer. But summer blockbusters that I like, such as Mission Impossible, definitely bring me back warm memories of seeing them during the summer season. The other question is something I'm going to re-ask from the Mamma Mia review, which is, which performance is worse? Pierce Brosnan in Mamma Mia or Russell Crowe in Les Miserables? And I'm going to give that to Brosnan, to be absolutely honest. And mainly that's because Crowe did have a good performance outside of the horrible singing. But then again, in all fairness to Brosnan, he didn't have much to work with in Mamma Mia, so it can be either or. But I'm going to go with Brosnan comparing the two of them together. You can follow me at Letterboxd and X at WatchRateHeart. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed it and share with your friends. I'm Brad from WatchRateHeart. Thank you for watching, and remember, we all watch and rate movies, but you give them the heart that makes them live forever.